Hey there. Ready for another deep dive? This time we're taking a look at Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews.
Ah, a classic.
It is, but get this. Our source material is not just the book itself. We've got some academic analysis to unpack, so we're talking philosophy, religion, maybe even some art history. Should be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be good. What I think is really interesting about using these sources is that it kind of gives us a peek behind the curtain. Helps us uncover deeper layers of meaning that you might not catch on a first read. Stuff about the moral landscape of 18th century England.
Right, like how Fielding's novel reflects and challenges those ideas.
Exactly.
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1740s, London. Everyone and their mother is raving about Samuel Richardson's Pamela, but here comes Henry Fielding, like totally throwing shade on this bestseller.
He was not a fan.
I mean, he hated it.
He really did. Found it morally questionable and, well, the writing, let's just say he thought he could do a lot better.
Yeah, you don't write a whole parody called Shamla unless you're really trying to make a point.
You know it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Fielding did. He wanted to expose what he saw as, I don't know, the hypocrisy, the absurdity of Pamela. But, and this is where it gets really interesting,
Tell me.
in the middle of roasting Richardson, Fielding kind of stumbles onto something special.
Wait, the birth of Joseph Andrews.
Bingo. In Shamila, there's this character, Parson Adams, and he was just so compelling that Fielding realized, hey, I've got something here. Joseph Andrews isn't just some extended parody. It becomes this fully formed satire with, like, its own vision of heroism and goodness.
It's like Fielding saying, okay, Richardson, you think that's how a good person acts? Watch this.
Yeah, exactly. And to really get Fielding's take, we have to kind of understand the whole concept of the good man in 18th century thought.
Oh, here comes the philosophy lesson.
Not quite a lecture, but yeah. Think about preachers like Isaac Barrow and Samuel Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
They were all about this active goodness, not just, empty piety. It's not enough to just think good thoughts. You got to go out and do good in the world.
So how does that play out in Joseph Andrews? Give me those connections.
Well, remember that quote from Clarke we talked about? He describes a good man as, and I'm paraphrasing here, someone who just makes everyone around him better off. Doesn't that just sound like Parson Adams to a T? He's always stumbling into these situations, trying to make things right, even if it backfires in these hilarious ways.
Yeah, it's like the road to comedic chaos is paved with those good intentions. But I've always been curious about the names Fielding picked. I mean, Joseph and Abraham, those are pretty loaded names, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're like direct links to these biblical figures known for specific virtues. You've got Joseph resisting temptation from Potiphar's wife, representing chastity. Then there's Abraham, embodying hospitality and charity, always welcoming strangers into his home.
So Fielding's basically baking those virtues right into the character's DNA.
Clever.
And another thing I noticed is this stark contrast between the city and the countryside in the novel. Like, London is painted as this den of vanity, while the countryside offers, like, the simpler, more virtuous life. Was that just, like, a literary trope, or was there something more to it back then?
Oh, it was way more than a trope. This was like a deeply held belief in Fielding's time. London represented the worst of society. Ambition, superficiality, just pure materialism. You know those satirical Hogarth engravings that were so
I
popular?
got those.
Well, they capture the dark underbelly of London life, and Fielding's kind of doing a similar thing in Joseph Andrews. But, and this is key, he contrasts this with the countryside, which was all about genuine connection, simple pleasures, a focus on what really matters.
So it's like London's where good intentions go to die, and the countryside is where you, like, rediscover your moral compass.
There's definitely a bit more to it than that, but yeah, you're getting at the core of that contrast Fielding's trying to highlight. But hey, we should probably talk about charity for a bit. Fielding had some pretty strong opinions about what true charity meant, and it wasn't just about throwing money at a problem.
Yeah, especially given the whole rigid social structure of 18th century England. What was his take? Was he, like, calling for some radical social upheaval or something?
I wouldn't say radical upheaval, but he was definitely critical of the injustices he saw. But in Joseph Andrews, his focus is more on the individual heart, He contrasts Parson Adams's genuine acts of giving with those who give for, I don't know, selfish reasons, like to appear pious, to manipulate others. It's about the motivation behind the act, not just the act itself.
So, like, true charity comes from this place of, like, genuine compassion, not a desire for, I don't know, recognition or personal gain.
You got it. And one of the best examples of this is when Adams runs into Parson Trolloper. This guy's a total miser, but he loves to preach about poverty. Of course, when it comes to actually helping the poor, he's nowhere to be found. It's classic, Fielding, hilarious satire that skewers hypocrisy and delivers a sharp moral message all at the same time.
Nice. Okay, so I'm sensing a pattern here. Fielding's using humor to expose this gap between what people say they believe and how they actually act, especially when it comes to morality. But I'm also curious about his view of human nature in general. He seems to believe in this, like, good nature, but he also acknowledges that people are, well, kind of messed up.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that makes Fielding so insightful. He understood that even the best of us, we can be led astray by, our baser instincts.
Yeah.
Greed, lust, pride, the whole nine yards.
Right, so even Parson Adams, as good-natured as he is, he makes his fair share of mistakes.
Exactly. And that's where Fielding's idea of good nature gets really interesting. It's not the same as, like, the cold logic of the Stoics.
Hold on, we're going full-on philosophy now. Break it down for me.
Okay, so the Stoics were all about keeping your emotions in check, being rational, detached, the whole Spock thing. But Fielding thought true goodness came from this place of feeling, empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, even if that made you, like, a bit messy, a bit impulsive. He believed in acting from the heart, even if it meant making mistakes along the way.
So it's about having this moral compass and a willingness to stumble and learn from those stumbles.
Yeah, that's it. You need both your instincts and your reason, your heart and your head, to really navigate life and try to be a better person. And speaking of navigating complexities, don't forget that Fielding was writing Joseph Andrews during a time when clergymen, especially those in the lower ranks of the church, were facing a lot of criticism.
Oh, right. It was a time of major religious and social change with lots of those debates about faith versus good works and even accusations of corruption within the church. So how does Joseph Andrews fit into all of that?
Well, for Fielding, it was a chance to kind of push back against those negative portrayals of clergymen. He wanted to show that, there were still good men in the church, guys like Parson Adams who were dedicated to their parishioners, trying to live a life of virtue even if they weren't perfect.
And it's not just presenting this, like, idealized image, right? Didn't Fielding's own sister, Sarah Fielding, say he was actually making fun of the people who made fun of Adams, not the parson himself?
That's a really important point. It's subtle, but it changes the whole game. He's not trying to create this saintly figure. He's highlighting the hypocrisy of those who criticize men like Adams for being simple or, for having normal human failings. It's a defense of the clergy, a reminder that true goodness could still be found within it.
So Joseph Andrews is more than just a funny adventure story. It's a defense of good men, a satire of hypocrisy, and this exploration of what it means to live a virtuous life, flaws and all.
Exactly. And what blows my mind is how much it still resonates today, centuries later.
Yeah.
We're still struggling with so many of the same issues Fielding's dealing with. Materialism, the search for authentic connection, the struggle to balance our, less than ideal impulses with our better angels.
It's true. It's like Joseph Andrews was written for the modern age or something. It's incredibly relevant. But before we get too deep into those modern day parallels, what's standing out to you so far in our exploration? What's really hitting home?
That's a good question. What really strikes me is how Fielding manages to, like, make all these moral points without being preachy.
Right.
He's not like he's hitting you over the head with a sermon.
Yeah, it's more like he's inviting us to laugh at the absurdity of it all,
Yeah, to laugh with him at how ridiculous people can be, but also to think critically about our own values and choices.
That's the magic of satire, I guess.
It really is. It holds up this mirror to
Yeah.
society, showing us all our flaws and, like, all the messed up things we do.
Right, but in a way that makes us laugh instead of feeling, attacked or judged.
Exactly. And Fielding was a master of that, a true master. But it's not just the humor that makes Joseph Andrews so great, The characters themselves are so well developed, even the ones who are supposed to be, like, the comic relief.
That's true. Like Lady Boovie, she's totally ridiculous, but you can't help but feel a little bit sorry for her at times.
I know, right? She's just so clueless, but in a way that makes her almost sympathetic.
It's like Fielding's characters are never just good or bad. They're just people. Complicated people driven by all sorts of motivations.
And that's what makes them feel so real, so relatable.
Yeah.
It's like we recognize ourselves in them, even the ones who are totally over the top.
It makes you think about how often we judge people based on these superficial qualities, Just like those characters who mock Parson Adams for his clothes or his, like, naivete.
It's like we're programmed to put people in these little boxes without really taking the time to understand them.
And don't we all do that to some extent? It's so easy to judge a book by its cover, as they say.
It really is. But Joseph Andrews kind of forces us to look beyond that, to question those assumptions,
Yeah, to remember that there's always more to the story than meets the eye.
and to approach each other with, empathy and understanding. A little bit of grace goes a long way.
Couldn't agree more. But I want to go back to the whole city versus countryside thing for a minute. We talked about how Fielding uses it to represent these different moral landscapes, but he also plays with it in a really interesting way when it comes to charity, right? It's not just about where you are, but how you give.
Oh, yeah, totally. Remember that scene where Parson Adams and Joseph are traveling and they run into a group of hunters having this big feast?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the perfect example of how Fielding makes fun of the way some people use charity, like as a way to show off their wealth and status.
Right. They basically offer Joseph and Adams scraps from their fancy meal while bragging about how generous they are.
It's all for show. None of that genuine compassion that Fielding's always talking about.
Yeah, it's like they're performing charity, not actually embodying it.
Exactly. And then to really drive the point home, Joseph and Adams later meet this poor peddler who shares his, like, super meager meal with them, no questions asked.
Yeah, it's such a powerful contrast. Makes you wonder, is Fielding saying that real goodness is more likely to be found in those who have less?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, he was writing in a time of huge economic disparity, so poverty and charity would have been front and center in his mind, for sure.
And it reminds us that the countryside, even though it's kind of idealized in the book, it's not some perfect utopia. It's still a place where people struggle, where hardship is real.
Right. It's like a microcosm of society with all its complexities and contradictions.
Oh, and speaking of contradictions, remember the episode with the roast pig?
Oh, man, that was a classic.
Joseph and Adams end up at this dinner where the host, this rich farmer, is obsessed with this massive roast pig.
It becomes this symbol of excess,
Yeah, totally. And everyone's acting so ridiculous around it, fawning over this pig, fighting over the best pieces.
It's hilarious, and it perfectly captures how we get so caught up in material things.
Even something as basic as food.
Yeah, exactly. But what's really funny is that even Parson Adams, as well-meaning as he is, gets swept up in the whole pig frenzy.
He can't resist. He ends up stuffing himself and arguing over who deserves the best cut. It's too good.
It's like Fielding's reminding us that nobody's immune to temptation. Even the good guys have their moments of weakness.
Exactly. And that's what makes his characters so relatable, so human. They're not perfect. They're just trying their best.
And sometimes their best isn't, all that great.
But it's the effort that counts, right? It's about recognizing that we're all flawed, but still striving to do the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's what Fielding's getting at. True virtue isn't about being perfect. It's about acknowledging our imperfections and trying to be better anyway.
So even though Fielding's exploring these big moral questions, he's not giving us easy answers.
Yeah, he's not preaching at us. He's just presenting these scenarios and letting us draw our own conclusion.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think that's why Joseph Andrews still feels so relevant today. It speaks to this, universal human experience, the struggle to be good in a world that often rewards selfishness.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what Fielding would satirize if he were writing today.
Oh, man, can you imagine?
Our obsession with social media, celebrity culture, the whole influencer thing.
You'd have a field day.
We'd probably get a modern-day Shea Mullah taking down Instagram and TikTok stars.
Uh-huh. I can totally see it.
Yeah.
But I also think he'd find plenty to admire in the everyday acts of kindness that we often take for granted.
True, like those stories you hear about people going out of their way to help strangers.
Yeah, or those who dedicate their lives to fighting for, important causes.
It's like even in this crazy mixed-up world, there's still a lot of good out there. You just have to look for it.
And I think that's the message Fielding's trying to get across. It's easy to focus on the negative, the absurdity, the hypocrisy. But there's also beauty, compassion, genuine human connection. It's all around us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Fielding's satire, his complex characters, his views on charity, the whole good nature thing. But I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, his defense of the clergy.
Yeah, that's an important part of the story, especially given what was going on at the time.
Right. Fielding was writing during this period where the church was facing a lot of criticism, accusations of corruption, complacency, a disconnect from the people they were supposed to serve.
It was a tumultuous time, for sure. And remember, Fielding himself almost became a clergyman, so he had this, inside perspective on the whole thing.
That's right. So what do you think he was trying to achieve by making Parson Adams the moral center of the novel?
Well, I think it's partly a response to those negative stereotypes of clergymen that were floating around. He wanted to show that there were still good men in the church, guys who really lived out the values they preached.
But it's not like he presents Adams as this flawless saint, right?
No, not at all. He's flawed. He's naive. He makes mistakes. Lots of mistakes, actually.
But that's what makes him so real. And through Adams, I think Fielding is trying to redefine what it means to be a good person. It's not about being perfect, it's about trying to do the right thing, even when you screw up.
Exactly. And it's important to remember what Fielding's sister said about him satirizing the people who mocked Adams. It's like he's defending the guy not just for being a good person, but for being a genuinely good person.
That's such a good point. It's about looking beyond those outward appearances and judging people by their actions, their intentions.
And that's a message that's still so relevant today. It's so easy to judge people based on superficial stuff, but Fielding's reminding us to look deeper, to see the humanity in everyone.
Yeah, to recognize that we're all just trying to figure things out, to navigate this crazy world the best we can.
And sometimes that means stumbling along the way, but it's the trying that matters,
Yeah,
right? The willingness to get back up and keep going, even when we mess up.
I love that. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Joseph Andrews, what are some key takeaways you host listeners will walk away with? What's the heart of Fielding's message? And how can we, actually apply it to our lives?
Hmm. Well, Well, it's amazing how Fielding pulls it all together. The humor, the satire, the philosophy, the social commentary, and it all comes together in this story that's just so fun to read, but also makes you think.
Yeah, it's like he's entertaining us and challenging us at the same time.
Exactly. And for me, the biggest takeaway is that idea of good nature, this active force. It's not enough to just be a nice person. You have to actually go out and try to make the world a better place, even if you mess things up sometimes.
Yeah, it's like Parson Adams, always stumbling around trying to help, even when his efforts backfire.
Yeah, exactly. But you can tell he's got a good heart. He genuinely wants to do the right thing, even if he doesn't always know what that is.
Like he's driven by this pure good nature, even when he's making a total mess of things.
Exactly. And I think that's really the heart of Fielding's message. True goodness isn't about being perfect. It's about trying, about putting in the effort, even when you screw up.
It's like embracing the fact that we're all human, we all make mistakes, but we can still choose to be good, to try to make things better.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful message, especially today. With all the pressure to be perfect, to have it all figured out, it's easy to get caught up in that and forget that it's okay to be flawed, to mess up, to just be human.
Yeah, Fielding is kind of giving us permission to screw up, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep trying.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you think about the ending of Joseph Andrews. It's not this fairy tale ending, is it? There are still loose ends, things left unresolved. But there's also hope. A belief that good things can happen, that happiness is possible, even in this messy world.
It's a realistic, kind of happy ending, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's what I love about Fielding. He doesn't shy away from the complexities of life. He doesn't give us these easy answers. He just presents these situations and lets us figure it out for ourselves.
And maybe that's the point, right? It's about engaging with the world, asking those tough questions, and figuring out what it means to be good.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you really want listeners to take away from this? What's the lasting impression?
Well, I hope they remember how funny Fielding is, how he can make us laugh at ourselves, at the absurdity of it all.
Oh, yeah. The humor is so important. It keeps us engaged, but it also helps us to see things in a new light.
And I hope they remember Parson Adams, too. This, bumbling, good-hearted guy who's always trying his best.
Yeah. Parson Adams. He's the heart of the book, for sure. And through him, I think Fielding's reminding us that true goodness is a choice. It's not something you're born with. It's something you actively choose to pursue day after day.
And it's not always easy. You're going to stumble. You're going to mess up. But it's that effort that counts. That willingness to keep trying, to keep putting good out into the world.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's been a blast exploring Joseph Andrews with you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure, as always. And for everyone listening, keep those questions in mind, keep exploring, and keep laughing. There's still so much to discover in Fielding's world.
And in our own world, too, right?
Absolutely. So, until next time, happy reading, everyone.
And happy adventuring.